So the most important part of a PhD application is getting a professor or a faculty member of a university who wants to mentor you.
Hi everyone, you're warmly welcome back to my channel. My name remains Ms. Ampofwa, and this is the International Student Hub. Today, I bring you another exciting episode with a friend of mine here. I'll say my childhood friend. We grew up in the same neighborhood, and God being so great, we are here today to share some experiences with you. But he is going to take us through applying to PhD. I think so far most of my vlogs have been centered on master's application, which is quite different. It takes a different dynamic compared to the PhD application. So I think since he is already in a PhD program, he's the right person to talk to. So I'm really honored to have him here, and I would like him to introduce himself. Prof, you are welcome.
Thank you. I know, I remember those times when people used to call me Prof in the neighborhood and, in church and all that. I mean, yeah, so thank you. It's a privilege to be on such a platform like this, where I'll share my experiences or any information that I have on PhD applications or graduate applications to the US in general. So my name is Kweku Nyantechi. Yeah, and I'm a second-year PhD student.
Wait, are you related to Kweku Nyantechi?
Well, I'll say no, I'm not related to him. But interestingly, during his glory days, I used to say I'm related to him, and I was taking like funds from people. But when his issues came, I dissociated myself with him. But yes, I'm not related to. I think the name is just a coincidence.
Yeah.
So I'm a second-year PhD student at Louisiana State University in communication disorders or speech and language pathology. Yeah, as it's also called. Yeah. So I live in Baton Rouge. That's the capital city of Louisiana State, where Louisiana State University is located. Yeah.
Wow, nice. And how has the program been so far, and your experience so far in the United States?
So I'm in my second year now in the US, and I mean it's like a mixed feeling, because the US is obviously a great country. Generally, I'll say it's been a good experience, and more especially because I was really interested in doing a PhD right from the onset when I was in college. And so the PhD experience is like a dream come true for me. So it's, based on that, I'll say I'm living my dream. So it's a good experience. Yeah, it's great.
Wow, that's great. And I want to say congratulations to you. I know from child, I would say I didn't really know your name until a few years ago, because I've always known you as Prof. Like everybody calls you Prof, and until recently I never knew your real names. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean that's what everybody was affectionately calling me, but it started
fulfilling prophecy. It has come to pass.
Yeah.
So then we will go straight into our interview for today, the agenda for today. Let me say that. So I want to ask, how many schools did you apply to, and what were the acceptance and then the rejection numbers?
I would say when I was applying for the PhD program, I was in a master's program in Ghana at the University of Ghana. Yeah, so I was applying to PhD programs whilst doing my master's. So I didn't apply to so many schools. I had wanted to finish my master's first and then get my master's certificate, after graduation before I start looking for PhD opportunities. But I realized that I could get into some schools whilst waiting to finish my master's. And so what I did was one very important thing in PhD applications in the US mostly is that a PhD is mentorship. It's not like you are being taught something different that you've been taught different from what you've been taught in college or during your master's or whatever, but it's like a mentorship process. And so the most important part of a PhD application is getting a professor or a faculty member of a university who wants to mentor you in that journey. And so what I was doing was I was sending messages to universities, that I knew were doing my program, that's speech and language pathology in the US. The US is a place where my program is being offered in lots of universities. So I sent messages to, normally that's the first step for PhD applications. You send a message to some faculty members whose research interests align with yours, having gone through the department web pages to look at their interests. And so when they tell you they are accepting students, and then that's when you think of applying to see whether you meet the requirements for the university and all that. So I must say I sent a number of messages to a number of schools, about 4.
Okay.
Whilst doing my master's, hoping to get a response from some of the supervisors. But I would say out of the 4 schools that I initiated the process, I had response from only 2, I think 4 or 5 schools actually. I had response from only 2 faculty members who were willing to interview me to see how suited my research interests were. And out of these 2 schools, I really applied to just one. That's Louisiana State University, where I am. And this is because in as much as the other schools that I had gotten like response from, or had gotten an offer for an interview from, the school was also good and all, but I wasn't really understanding the way their funding was working. Whether I'll do a fellowship or I'll be on a grant or I'll be on an assistantship. It wasn't really clear. But the school where I am, it was the funding and how the program was more structured to me. And most importantly, I settled here because the faculty member or the professor who was willing to work with me showed very keen interest in working with me, and started drawing out, laying out projects that we could do together, looking at my expertise and my background. So I applied to just one school formally. Okay. But the other schools that I initiated, I had started talking to the faculty, and I had even created application portals waiting for to get a faculty member show interest in me, and then I'll apply. But I didn't do that for all of them. So I'll say just one.
Okay, so you mean with the PhD application, like I'm making a distinction here, unlike the masters, some people actually approach faculty members and initiate that conversation, but then most of them, you just do your application straightforward. For the school I am in, I never actually consulted anyone. I just did my application straight away. So with a PhD, it's very necessary to actually have that rapport or that encounter with the faculty members, right?
Yes, it's very important. There are some schools that, or some departments whose PhD programs, you don't really need to talk to faculty members just like the master. But most PhD positions that you find in the US, I would say 70 to 80% of them, you have to talk to a faculty member, and a faculty member has to accept to work with you and to mentor you through the program before
you
your
even do the
application.
application.
Because else, when you just apply like you do in a master's, your application would go through and nobody would send you like anything. So in certain universities, when you are applying for PhD, they write in their requirements that they state there clearly that as part of your requirement or as a first step or the most important thing in your application, as some schools will put it, is to talk to a faculty member.
Okay,
programs, yeah.
That's eye-opening because I think I went through a few PhD programs that I was looking at, and I think most of them, some of them, when you're writing your statement of purpose, they actually give you the guidelines on the things you should include, and then I think with some of them, they actually stated whether you had consulted with a faculty member and then why you would want to work with that person. So I think this is like, it's a good point to note. And also, like, during your application, did you receive any coaching? Did somebody coach you, or you did everything on your own?
Well, that's a good question. So I'll say I did everything by myself because I started my school's applications way back before. I started way back in somewhere in 2017. You know, when I had finished my undergrad, and I was doing my service in the university, I was motivated to apply to do a master's. And so before I did my master's in Ghana, I had already applied for master's programs in the US and in Europe, and I didn't get funding to most of them. Like, I'll say I didn't get any proper funding from them, so I had experience already for applying to schools. And so when I entered my master's program, applying for a PhD, I was familiar with navigating through department websites. It can be cumbersome, when you are doing those things. And so I did everything by myself because of my experience that I've done doing that for years. Yeah. So.
Okay, so and then while you were searching for schools, I think your search, how did you do it? Were you looking at schools that had your program? Because some people actually search for just any schools where they will get funding. Some also search by programs. So how was yours like?
Well, so for my field of study, that's speech and language pathology.
Was that what you did for the master's?
Sorry?
Was that what you did for the master's?
Yes. Okay. So, yeah, I did my master's in speech and language therapy at the University of Ghana, School of Biomedical and Allied Health Sciences. So, yeah, it's the same program.
Okay.
So, for my field of study in the US, there's a governing body for that field of study. And most fields of studies in the US have that. We have the Sociology Association, English Language Association, and all that. So there's the Association of American Speech and Hearing Association, American Speech and Hearing Association. They have a very, very big website that they post all schools that offer their programs from bachelor's to PhD level. So I went to their website, set through their database, and they had schools and the locations where the schools were. And so I looked for schools there. And after I found the schools on my website, on the website there, I went to Google each of the schools, and went through their department. I searched through more than 150 schools that were offering the program. Yes. So it was a simple Google search, but it was guided because I went to the website.
Great. Okay, and then I want to ask what actually went into the application. I think you've touched on a few of them, but after the consultation, the application process itself, can you elaborate like what actually went through the documents you had to submit and all that?
Yes. So what happened was that I before I started having email conversations with a faculty member that was interested in me. And so before I had even contacted the faculty member about my interest in doing a PhD under her, I had gone through the department website and looked at the program entry requirements. So before I contacted her that I want her to be my potential supervisor, like I'm PhD supervisor, I had interest in the program. I had already gone through the requirements and I knew I checked whether I was eligible for the requirements if a faculty member accepts to work with me. And so the application process was also there, though talking to a faculty member was very important and vital. But so what happened was, like other schools, now everything is online. So you open an application portal. And so for my program requirements, I had to write the GRE exam, and because I was prepared to do a PhD, I was willing to write the GRE if the need be,
Yeah.
So I wrote the GRE, and then I think the personal statement was also there. It's also very important for PhD applications. And then my transcripts, yes, I have not finished my master's, but I had my first year master's transcript. So I added it to my undergraduate transcript, and I did that. But apart from the GRE, I was also made to write the IELTS exam, which was very unfortunate because being someone from Ghana, in an English speaking. But what happened was Ghana had not been part of the database of countries that the English proficiency requirement had been waived for. So
for your school.
In 2019, when I was applying, so I sent email messages to the graduate school telling them, explaining my background. They still didn't agree. And my potential advisor asked me to go and just write it, So I wrote GRE, I wrote IELTS, and I added all the documents I need. And then I looked for recommendations. And so the application process is there, just like the master's steps. But then the difference is the faculty member thing. Yeah.
Okay. What time of the year did you make the application, and when did you hear from them? And did the funding come automatically with your admission?
Yeah. So let me start from the last question. Yes, the funding came with the admission. Very fortunately for me, because I know with a lot of programs, funding comes like after you've gotten admission. You either apply or you are automatically considered. It comes later. But my admission letter came with its funding offer. And so I started applying for the PhD I started looking for schools somewhere around July, like let's say summer. So June, July 2019.
Okay.
At that time, I had finished first year in my master's program and I was entering my second year. So that summer break, I started talking to schools and that's when I started applying. But the application portal the applications usually open in September, October, like to December or somewhere middle of January the following year for the next year's entry. But for PhD applications, what I advise my people who are interested in doing PhD is that because you have to talk to faculty members, you have to start. So I started sending messages to professors across the US somewhere in June, July, like 5 months or 6 months to the deadline for my application. Wow. And so that's when I started. But the actual application, I started it in November somewhere October, November. And yes.
Wow. You exhibited a lot of determination.
Yes. That's what many people say, that I was really determined, because my master's program was a full-time master's program. And anybody who is familiar with master's programs at the School of Biomedical or College of Health Sciences in the University of Ghana, we go 17 weeks instead of the 13 weeks that regular students on the main campus do. So, and practicums, but I still managed to apply because I wanted to do a PhD right away after my master's. So yeah.
So when you go in, how did you feel? So let me also ask before this question. So does that mean that once you actually interact with a faculty member and they accept to work with you, can you say then and there that automatically you have been accepted into the program?
Well, so it varies from school to school, and within the same school, it varies within departments sometimes. So I know of certain schools or certain departments, even within my school, where a faculty member has to accept your applications, has to accept to talk to you before you initiate your applications. But then it's very vital also that other requirements are met, especially for PhD programs that are very competitive in the US. There are some PhD programs that are very competitive. They get as much as 70 applications for, let's say, 5 or 6 slots, especially within the humanities and social sciences. So for such PhD programs, one faculty member may interview a number of students.
Okay.
So not just you, but let's say 3 or 4, or let's say 5. Okay. And then it's your applications, the power or the strength of your applications that will determine which of them goes to you. But yes, and also for some departments or some universities, when a faculty member agrees to work with you, sometimes the faculty member is given funding, especially those in the hard sciences. The faculty member has a grant that they use to sponsor students. And so when you are going to be under them, if you are going to be under them, they are the ones that will get the funding and they will give you. With such applications, once they accept to work with you, it means you are going to get the funding. But most of those applications is very difficult to get acceptance from faculty members. The ones that once you get in, they will fund you. It's very tough because they don't want their money to go waste. They want someone that can help them maximize the research.
Okay, that's a lot. And how did you feel when you got into the program? That very day when you got the email?
I can't describe that feeling, especially when the funding offer was on the letter, like what I'll be earning and all those things. Like the feeling was sometimes when I'm even up until now, I sometimes remember that moment, and then I just it was so great. I mean, I was like, oh, all my efforts have paid off, and the Lord has been good to me also.
So with a PhD, they didn't require that you submit your master's certificates. It was all about the transcript, right?
Well, yes. Luckily for me, some universities do not require you to. In fact, most universities for PhD, they will not require to see your master's certificate. A transcript will do for your master's. But when you enter the program, you have to provide your master's certificate to solidify your admission system. But you need to provide your master's certificate. But one very fortunate thing for PhD applications in the US, unlike Europe, in Europe, you need to provide your master's certificate. That's what I heard before you get into a PhD. I don't know for UK, but I know for Germany, Holland, and other parts, you have to finish your master's. But in the US, In fact, the US is one country that admits people into PhD programs with just their bachelor's degree. So my Ghanaian roommate, he got into a PhD with his bachelor's degree. He didn't need a master's certificate. And the reason why the US does this is because in the US, the first 2 years of your PhD is very comparable to a master's degree.
Okay.
So they don't require you to have a master's degree before entering.
Wow. Interesting. So what were some of the outstanding qualities you think actually you brought on board that actually made you the preferred candidate of all those who applied?
Well, so yes, that's a great question. So I must say, getting into a PhD program, you need to have some qualities really that the department, your faculty member interested in you, and the whole department as a whole is are interested in before they can import you to come and do a PhD. So one of the things that I think helped me was, and I heard it from what the professors were saying, even when I came here, that I did my national service as a teaching assistant at the University of Ghana, Department of Linguistics. And so I was teaching courses, very fortunately, unlike some of my TAs in other departments, we were made to be teaching courses in 1-hour tutorial sessions. And I heard that it was like when I was interacting with the faculty member, that was one thing the department was really happy about, that I have teaching experience within the university. And so, because part of what we do in the PhD is we teach. So as I'm speaking now, I'm the course instructor of an undergraduate course, and I'm the one that designs their syllabus and sets exams for them, and all that. So me being a TA was really a plus because they knew I had worked with professors, I had been in the university environment, I had taught college students. And another thing also was that I really engaged in lots of extracurricular activities. During my undergraduate years, I was not really into student politics, but when I entered my master's phase, I was really into student activities, and I was the editor-in-chief for Graduate Students Association of Ghana, University of Ghana chapter. Yeah, so I was the chairman of the editorial. I was the chief editor-in-chief in charge of the editorial committee, and we were writing journals and all that. So, and I was also a freelance writer for a website, a scientific website in Ghana. And so I think those things I got to know when I was applying that they are very important, and lots of admission committees look at that, especially very good schools and very big schools. They look at people who have the capacity to engage with people and people who can, because the PhD curriculum is not, you'll be in charge of projects, you'll be in charge of a lab as an instructor, you'll be the lead author for a research paper, you'll be going for conferences. And so I think the extracurricular activities that I showed that reflect on my CV, and there are a number of them too that, unless I pick up my CV before I can list, but I think those things help. So I advise people who are interested in, especially PhD, to have some either work experience. It could be an internship, paid employment, volunteering work, which I also did a lot, and it also really helped. Yeah.
That's amazing. I think the final question you've already answered, but just to lay more emphasis on it, what are some of the advice that you give to prospective PhD applicants?
Yeah, so for PhD applicants, one thing you need to know when you're applying for a PhD is that the whole process is not like applying for a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, which is mostly coursework oriented and preparing you for industry. A PhD prepares you to work within academia, to work in industry, to work everywhere. it's like a training that is holistic. And so if you're applying for a PhD, you need to really be prepared, and you need to be psyched up. You can't just apply for a PhD like you're applying for a course, because come to think of it, it's about 4 or 5 years of your life. Yeah. And so you have to really be prepared. You have to get your materials. If you have to write the GRE exam, you have to write it. Or any other aptitude exam, you have to write it. And one thing I also advise prospective PhD applicants is that don't give up. There are lots of people have applied to schools. Most of us who are studying in the US, we have applied to schools severally. And it's not our first attempt that brought us here. Remember, I mentioned that I had applied for master's programs, which I didn't get funding for before I did my master's in Ghana and then PhD here. So don't give up. People easily give up. If you really want to study, you need to psych yourself up, and you really need to go for it. And another thing is finances. You need to gather some money, because you pay application fee. You may have to write the GRE, and I have some friends who want to apply for PhD programs and all that, but they are not working, or they are not really doing a paid work. So they are like, oh, where would I get money to do this? Where will I get money to do that? So you need to be prepared financially too, so that you can apply to the number of schools that you'll be willing to apply to it. And then I'll repeat what I said. Never give up. Yeah. Never give up. Even if you applied, you sent messages to faculty and they did not respond to you, try again the following year. Try more schools that you think you may be accepted. And yes, I just remembered something. Maybe this may be a final advice. A lot of people don't check the acceptance rate of schools. Mm-hmm. Most people I interact with who want to study outside, they've not even heard what acceptance rate is. You can simply Google search the acceptance rate of every school. Some schools have very, very, very low acceptance rates. There are some schools that have acceptance rates as low as 5%, some 3%. Meaning if 100 people apply for positions, they pick just 3. Mm-hmm. So we don't just apply to schools that you've heard, like, oh, I want to do a PhD in public health, so I want to apply. There's a university called University of Pennsylvania. It's UPenn we are talking about. It's top 10 in the world. And Princeton and all those universities. Yeah. You have to look at. Who
said Harvard?
Yeah, Harvard is not the only school. You have to look at a school that, and apart from the fact that you need a school, you need to look for a school that it's not very competitive. I'm not saying people shouldn't apply to Harvard. Yeah. I know of people who have gotten schools like Stanford for PhD and they've gone, Edinburgh and all those things. But you need to look at the fact that you are not applying alone. Yeah. There are so many odds against you. You are applying with a number of people. And so you have to look for schools that are not very exceedingly competitive, so that you may throw your money away or something. Yeah. But you need to look at schools that, and also most importantly, a school that is best suited for your research interests. A school that is suited for your research interests. Not that you are a microbiologist and you want to do a PhD in microbiology and you go to a university where they do a PhD in plant science. Meanwhile, you study human microbiology. You see, so those things are very important for PhD. Else you would have to live for 5 years of your life living an unfulfilled kind of life. Yeah. So
this is
lots of advice, right?
Yeah, so insightful. Thank you. I hope people will actually heed to them. So your final comments, any shout outs, greetings to your friends back home, family. Yeah.
Yeah, so yes, I've missed my family back home. Family back in Alaju. Yeah, I've missed all of you, and I want to say a big thank you to everybody that has made an impact in my life, in no matter how small or big the impact is. So my parents, they really gave me the best education that they could give me, and my family, other family members who support, my friends who affectionately called me Prof, and all those people that I knew, including you, the motivation. That's what has brought me here. And that's what made me see what was in me, like what was a perfect career goal for me. And so I want to say hi to everybody, and also all my friends and people I know who are applying to schools this year. I think we are in the phase where we are waiting for admission decisions. And so I wish you all the best. From next week, people will start getting letters, and it's a very tense moment, really. So I wish you all the best. People who are applying for schools, all my friends and family, all my well wishers, and everybody who comes to your channel.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It's really delightful to have you here, and you shared a lot of your experiences with us, and we are so grateful. It's been a wonderful conversation with you, and I'm super excited that you made it. And as a PhD student, I wouldn't want to waste your time. So I think we will bring the interview to an end, and I hope that you have a lovely weekend.
Okay, you too. Thanks for hosting me. Have a lovely weekend too.
You too. Adios. Bye-bye.
Bye.